Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Today I'm with a very special guest, the one and only Miss Casey Carter.
Hey.
There we go. So how'd you get the Miss part? Is that just something you came up with on your own, or?
So Miss, I think I kind of borrowed it from Miss Info. I loved Miss Info. She's like my biggest inspiration growing up. Are you familiar with Miss Info?
I am not.
Oh my God, and you're in radio. You
Oh, no.
you need to do your homework, young man.
Oh, no.
She was big on radio out in New York during like the time Angie Martinez was hot and everything like that.
Okay.
But she's an Asian woman, and I saw her on VH1 when they were doing those shows like recapping hip hop and things like that.
Hey, it's Laura Stiles from the Hot 97 Morning Show.
And it's your girl, Miss Info from Hot 97 and also MissInfo.tv. And we're repping hotnewhiphop.com.
It was just really inspiring to me to see someone who looked like me talking about something that I loved, which I didn't think that somebody from my race could insert themselves in. So she was a big inspiration on that. So I'm pretty sure I just like borrowed that from her.
Right. Aren't there a few artists that do that too? Like I think Gladys Knight does that. Does Lauryn Hill do that also? I could be mistaken.
I'm not too sure. Yeah.
It's interesting though.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, you've been in like the radio industry in Seattle for a long ass time, huh?
Well, music. I did radio for what? It was like a year and a half, which was fun.
Oh.
Definitely just music and independent nightlife and all that stuff.
Got it. And you started out with your blog, and then it just propelled from there, correct?
Yeah, I started off with my blog, and then I was going out all the time, going to clubs and parties and things like that, and I just saw a space for myself to, instead of paying to go to these places, create a space where people would pay me to come party. So with the blog and then the nightlife and then my love that grew for independent music, it kind of just all came together and has been holding me down for a while.
Wow. So from my understanding, like when I have my own website, what I have to do, you have to like pay like a subscription or something, not a subscription, like a monthly fee to keep a website up. And I feel like you don't have your blog anymore, but does that mean the blog is gone, or is that something that people can still like look up? Or if you're not paying for it anymore, how does that work?
I started on a blog spot. So I've been doing this before Wix and all that stuff. Like I actually developed like a whole website and stuff like that. So
wow.
There's a blog spot. I think that some of those posts are still up. I've Googled them a few times to see if they're there. But I was going by MS Casey Carter. So now I obviously am MISS. So I believe that's up, and that was like the beginning. So that's just when I was like posting every and anything, and I had no direction, and I was just super young and really vocal about whatever I loved. And then it grew into I think mscaseycarter.com, which I don't know. I think some of that stuff in between that old one and some of this new stuff might be gone. So, I mean, I'm sure you could Google and research and find some stuff.
Right. And then you started the Glow Up podcast in like 2016, and podcasts came out in like, I think 2004, but they're still kind of like a newer deal. So like you kind of hopped on the podcast train pretty early.
Yeah, I got super lucky because I didn't know what podcasts were prior to listening to, there was, what is that one? That Serial podcast. That was, somebody had put me on to that. And before that, I had a producer who was reaching out to me and was like, hey, I think you're great. Like, let's do a podcast together. And I was like, I don't know what the hell this is. So I just left him on red and didn't deal with him. And then after, I was introduced to Serial, which I like was obsessed with. And then The Read was a podcast that really inspired me to be like, oh, okay, now I get it. Like, this is I know I can do this. So from there, I linked back up. Luckily with that producer, he didn't, have any animosity or hard feelings towards me and was super ready to jumpstart and give me a podcast.
Right. And what was the goal? Like I felt like my goal when I first started the podcast was always just to like understand the music scene better personally, because like I'm a huge hip hop fan, but like before doing the podcast, I didn't even know there was a music scene whatsoever. But it seems like before your podcast, you already knew there was a scene.
Oh yeah, I mean, I feel like it was golden time. It was a golden era. Like I was so lucky to be a part of so much that, that Seattle had to offer at that time. I mean, Jarv, obviously, you'll be able to talk to him and learn a lot more, because he was really he was really in it before. Like he brought me over to the side that I needed to be on.
Mhm.
I was just so immature and didn't understand what was going on, at the time. But yeah, I went to a local music show, and I went in there thinking like local music sucks. It's corny. It's annoying. Like, because I just grew up around guys who just all wanted to be rappers, and they all were emulating like what they saw on TV versus like making original music. So when I went to that show, I saw people making dope stuff, and I was like, oh, okay, like this is dope. I was already inspired to like be this personality or whatever and throwing parties and stuff. So I was like, they have the same passion as I do, but they're doing something different. What can I do to help them? But it's kind of different with the podcast. So to answer your question, for the glow up, I mean, for me, it says it all in itself. Like I'm all about providing information and encouraging people and motivating people, and just if I have the tools or the knowledge, like I'm down to pass those along. And when I started the glow up, that's what it was. I wanted to inspire listeners by sharing these stories from entrepreneurs and letting them know, like, hey, like this is the background they come from, and you can do it too. All while teaching them and providing information. When the podcast did start, I did have a different podcast co-host with me, so the direction of what I saw it wasn't going where I wanted to, so we had to like switch things up. And I'll say we're 4 years in now. I have a new co-host. Shout out to my girl Naomi, and we're definitely in that exact direction and that vision that I saw. So it took us a few years, but yeah, I mean, we're all about just providing that game so people can glow up.
Yeah, having a co-host can be so difficult. Like when I first started my podcast, I thought that I needed like a co-host or like a partner of some sort. But then I kind of realized, for me at least, it was just a way that I felt it was a way of like helping me get out of my shell, because I felt like I needed someone to show me direction, even if they weren't as directionally inclined as me. Even it just felt like it was easier to have a partner. What made you decide to like start with a co-host and continuously have a co-host? Because what I've noticed, like some episodes, you'll be like, "Oh, the guy's out of the studio, so it's just me and my guest versus you and a co-host." Like, do you feel, because it is your podcast, is it sometimes difficult to have a
Well,
co-host?
I started it. I mean, my when I work with people, nothing is just mine; it's ours. So when
Mm,
I started the podcast, it was ours with that specific co-host. Um, Initially, I was like, I need a Charlemagne, and that's exactly what that person was at the moment. But it just, again, it was going in a different direction, and not in the inspirational and motivational way that I wanted it to. Having Naomi on the show just really helps balance things out. I'm very set in my ways, and like I have a certain style of doing things. And I think adding a co-host adds balance for me. It gives other people, like especially our guests, other approaches. And I think for me it's a great balance. I love having a co-host, especially when it's something like that, where it's for the community. Really,
mhm,
it's not just me. So I personally enjoy it with that. And it
right.
helps when it comes to all the work. Like when you're doing an independent podcast, you're doing everything yourself.
Yeah.
And if you really, really, really want to grow, you can't do it all by yourself. So I think having her and then being able to like guide her and teach her and be somewhat like a mentor to her helps me and makes me want this even more for both of us.
Hmm. What do you look for like in a co-host? Like, what did you see in Naomi? Because I made sure to like do different segments throughout. I haven't listened to every single. You have a ton of episodes out, but I made sure to like every few benchmark episodes I listen, I could see like how the co-host changed and everything like that. Like, what did you personally like see in Naomi that made it seem like she was the one to be your co-host?
She started off as our intern, so she had already been like seeing what we needed and things like that. It was a risk for me just because she doesn't have a background in, what I'm doing, and that was the biggest thing when the other co-host left, was that I needed somebody who can bring in their own audience, who can be confident and can keep up with me, because I have a very powerful personality and voice, and I need somebody who can also, balance that out and not just let me overpower things. Though she didn't have any of that, her interest is what, just really sparked me. I'm a person who is just always trying to give back. And if I see somebody, like if I see something special, but I don't see it fully yet, I'll give you the chance to show me what I'm trying to find. So that's just what I did. I took a chance on her. And she's just always willing to learn and listen. And that's really what you look for, is somebody who's just like really open-minded and things like that. But Naomi also is just really well spoken. She's really careful with her words. She's really she takes her time with a lot of things. And for me, that's exactly what I need. Even though I thought I needed somebody who was just like me, I needed somebody who was a little bit of the opposite for me, again, to keep that balance and help me out. And she teaches me things too, so she's been great.
Right. So you said she started as your intern. Does that mean, from what when you intro your episode, it's like you're live at the soundcasting studio or something like that, I think you say. So was the podcast like part of that studio, or like how did that
So
come together?
they're our producing network.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, and they own that studio, and that's where we would record prior to the pandemic.
Oh, so she interned for the podcast or for the studio?
Podcast, for me
Okay.
specifically, for the Glow Up.
Wow, that's an interesting thing. I've never really thought of having an intern for a podcast. Like, everything I've done, I've just like learned on my own from like YouTube, basically.
And exactly why I provided those, I love, again, helping people and teaching people and opening up these internships that are, they can be short, they can be long, it just depends. But you can Google and research as much as you want, but learning from an actual person and having like actual experience is going to be the best teacher.
Hell yeah. Do you feel like do you think you're like the OG music podcast for Seattle then?
Definitely not, because I don't think that the Glow Up is a music podcast. Like, and that's
Okay.
what I always wanted to make sure that people understand, is that the Glow Up is for entrepreneurs. Like, you're not going to listen to the Glow Up to find out about music shit. Like, it's all about entrepreneurship. So I try and keep that very, very separate. Sure, we may have artists and people involved in the music scene, but it's not a music podcast. Now, when it comes to like this music stuff, I wouldn't consider myself an OG, but maybe like a big sister or something like that, because I would never discredit any of the OGs that have definitely pioneered what we have here in Seattle.
Whenever like so many artists I've interviewed, like they bring you up so often though. I feel like it's like you definitely, like, anyone that talks about you is like says that you've helped their career in some way or another, like just by giving them a voice or whatever it is.
That was like the best thing I've heard all day. That was so great. Thank you.
Yeah, it was crazy because I didn't know how to spell your name or anything. Like when I first started the podcast, I would just hear Casey Carter over and over, and they're like, "Yeah, some people like Casey Carter," and I thought you were like a mysterious guy at first or something. I had no idea what to expect.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
That warms my heart.
Yeah, it's podcasting in Seattle is very interesting. Like, I've noted, I thought I was kind of doing something special when I started to doing like podcast collabs, but I guess like there's a whole podcast community that I keep finding, and like you've collabed with like a lot of podcasts. And is there like when there comes to this like podcast community, do you feel like everyone's like connecting though, or is it just like a collab just to, get their name out there more? Like, are podcasts helping each other?
From my understanding, I do see a lot of the people in like from different types of genres of the community collaborating with each other. It's just weird though, because a lot of people start podcasts and then they stop.
Mm,
So that's been the funny thing. So it makes you a little hesitant to support people because you're like, okay, I don't know how long this is gonna go, you know? But for the most part, I mean, we try and do so many things to connect with podcasts. I mean, we were throwing mixer events specifically for podcast hosts so that we could all get together and be in person and ask each other questions and things like that. Like we always invite them onto our show, or if they have an event, we're always trying to support their events and things like that. And I see that vice versa. So I mean, for me, I see great support
hmm Yeah,
because
that's
people are
crazy.
keeping consistent.
Yeah, there's definitely like once I like open like no matter what it is in Seattle, I feel like it's sometimes like turning over like a rock and then seeing like a collective of people versus just like everyone's together. And it's like lately I've been looking more into like collaborations, and I'll like pick up one rock and see like all these little podcasts, pick up another rock, all these other podcasts. It's very interesting how it works. Do you
Yeah.
but I feel like it's podcasting when you look at it, it's just like it's kind of like a music art form as well. Like you notice how there's all these different like cliques in the Seattle area. Do you think it's just how the Seattle's vibe to be clicky, or do you think we can break through this like click based thing and everyone be connected?
I think that's like pretty typical in all major cities, is that everyone just kind of has their own little clique of things. Maybe a little more here in Seattle because we're like that. I don't know. It is, there's that term, the Seattle freeze, and like we are with our own. Um, but for me, what I always tell people is just be cool, be genuine, support, show love, don't overdo stuff, don't be thirsty to be a part of something, and you should be good and be good at what you do.
hmm
Um, and you should be good with everybody. I've seen people who are not from here who have made their way into to being a part of the scene. There's so many people, so it's not impossible. It's just, are you trying too hard? Are you not trying hard enough? There's
hmm
you just gotta keep it cool.
Do you think you've still stayed pretty in touch with like what's going on in the Seattle music scene, or do you think like over the years you've focused more on like your most recent interviews, like they even have like longer titles and it's more like focused on like influencers, in my opinion, to like help inspire people versus like you said you weren't like a never a full like music podcast, but I feel like it's definitely it's taken a shift. If have you noticed that as well, or is that like purposeful?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because that's the direction that I've always wanted to go in. But again, I was being pulled in different ways and needed to figure it out. But when it comes to being tapped in with the music scene, I mean, definitely before COVID, I would say I was definitely tapped in. I was working at the radio station and doing the local music show. And, there's just, I could see myself getting a little far away from it just because like I don't really listen to a lot of hip hop anymore. Like I listen to a lot of R&B and things like that. So um but again, I feel like the podcast is like super separate from like who Miss Casey Carter is. Like Miss Casey
Mhm.
Carter is just a host of the Glow Up, but the Glow Up is not like my whole life.
Right.
If that makes sense. So I'm always going to be involved some way with independent music artists and things like that, but that's not going to reflect on what we're doing with the Glow Up.
Hell yeah. And you had a second podcast for a little bit too, like the tea of the week thing, huh?
Mhm.
Was
That
that
was
like
that was just for Cube. That was also a way because I wasn't doing interviews since I only had 2 hours on the radio. So I just wanted another way since, I was working with artists, they have stories. Who are these people? So I just developed a new podcast to host on the iHeart platform to kind of give these guys a little more time to talk instead of, because I was playing all their music and I had no idea who they were. So
Mhm.
I wanted to give them some shine. So I just developed a podcast to kind of go with what we were doing with the come up.
Right. Well, how would you describe yourself to people then? Because yeah, you definitely aren't just like a podcaster. Like how would you if you had to label like the multiple things you do, like even throw events even. So like for like someone who's not even from Seattle or from Seattle and don't know much about you, how would you describe yourself?
Yeah, so I would say I'm a media personality, and I'm kind of like, I don't even know. I'm just the plug. I'm the person who's going to help you out. Like, what do you need? What do you want? You needed me to throw you an event? You need somebody a part of your something? Like, I don't really think I have a title. I mean, being, I love being a woman in all this because I don't have to just be like, okay, this is just all I do. Like, I do everything. So if somebody was to ask, like, what does she do? Yeah, definitely she does. She's a host of a podcast, but if you need something, she's the person you can go to and ask.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is the podcast like a side hustle at this point, kind of, or is it
It's
like
a
on the?
main focus of mine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We're like I've always been trying to. I give myself like, how do I describe it? Like time markers and like milestones to reach for like one of my goals for like the first year was to like reach 100 interviews, reached 100 interviews, start like a website, started a website, things like that. Are there certain milestones you've been trying to reach through the 4 years of your podcast that you feel like you have reached? And are there some that you feel like you haven't reached yet still?
I honestly feel like we're just getting started with everything, even though it's taken 4 years to get to where we are. I feel like everything is kind of new to us now, just because, for one, we're in a whole new world. For two, Naomi and I are finally like on the same page when it comes to like energies and flowing of conversations and things like that. And then three, the type of guests that we have on the show are exactly what I finally wanted. Like, it took me all that time to finally get to where I want. So when it comes, we have obviously new goals and things like that. But I think for me, the whole time I was doing it, I was just trying to get to where I am right now.
Damn. See, that's what I'm saying. That's why I personally feel like I can't have a co-host. Like I'm such a nerd for what I'm doing. Like I feel like co-host can help you grow. Like you're fine. You learn more about yourself, what you like about certain people and don't. But like, yeah, it can be difficult. I feel like to have a
Yeah,
partner.
I'm very I feel like I'm similar in a sense when it comes to like working and things like that. But I will say the more and more I started collaborating or like bringing on co-hosts or partners and things for certain things that I normally wouldn't let people come into, the more and more I learned about myself, my working style, and I was also given perspectives on things how that I wouldn't see them. You know, they're different eyes, they're different ears, and maybe you don't have to listen to them, especially because this is your podcast or whatever. Um, I think they're the ones who really have helped me make this grow.
Mm-hmm. So you don't
And
like
what was that?
so you don't like regret anything then, huh?
I don't regret anything. Everything has led me to exactly where I need to be right now.
Yeah. It's that's good though. I feel like sometimes I feel like time is on our side but isn't on our side. Like I feel like
Yeah.
it's a weird thing. I feel like COVID definitely has slowed things down, which has helped me at least. And I noticed that you kind of took a break for a little bit too when COVID hit, but you definitely started picking up again. Like, what was the transition like for you to when COVID? A lot of people actually, I noticed a lot of podcasts just completely stopped overall with COVID.
Exactly. Yeah. As soon as COVID hit, I'm a problem solver. So I was trying to figure out what am I gonna do with the podcast? What am I gonna do with myself? I'd already started working on my consultation stuff with like independent artists and small business owners. It's more geared towards artists, um, as far as like helping them and guiding them and teaching them things one on one. So I was able to kind of pivot and start doing that since I wasn't doing events anymore. The podcast, what it felt like was it was just a big old mess. And we were trying to keep our heads above water. And we're trying to figure everything out. We're trying to be respectful to each other's times and emotions. Um, and it was just really difficult for us, even though we were able to get so many dope guests on the show. We were able to open up our audience to, I mean, not audience, but our guests to people who were outside of Seattle, which was like something we've never done, because if you weren't in person, then we weren't interviewing you.
Mm,
But again, when we're on a break right now, so we're not coming back till February, and
wow.
I feel like this was all needed for us. I personally have just been working hard for the past 10 plus years on everything and have never given myself a break. And 2020 definitely gave me the time to do that and be comfortable with taking a break and not being like, oh, you're being lazy. Or, if Naomi isn't feeling well, like not thinking like, oh my God, why is she doing this? Like, no, we need the breaks. We need the time. And I
Right.
feel like, and you said like time is either on our side or is not, like, that is the biggest thing I learned, is that like no matter how much you think time is going against you, it's not. Like, you got to lean into that. You got to trust that this universe, this God, whoever, what you believe in that's making everything happen, has your best interest at heart. And no matter if you're not getting what you think you want, you're getting exactly what you need.
Right. Was there like a certain goal you had? Because you said you've been in media for like 10 plus years. Was there a certain goal like you had that you look back on and wish you, how do I describe? Because I think it's what I'm really looking for when I interview people is like, I'm young and I feel like a lot of people kind of, whether they realize it or not, don't like to accept like information or learn from others. They kind of like bang their head against the wall, and then that's how they learn, right? Like, oh, I don't believe that's what's going to happen, and then they learn from their mistakes. I feel like for like a podcast, when there's millions of podcasts out there now, just like how there's millions of artists out there. So I feel like what it's important to me is to soak up as much information and like learn from others as I can. Is there like a certain goal that you thought you'd have reached by now that you haven't? Like there's artists that I've been working with that have like been making music for like over 10 years. And they said like the best music they've made is once they actually realize like they may never blow up, right? And then once you accept that, then you could actually focus on like what you love about music versus I'm doing this just to hopefully become famous and make money.
Yeah, I guess I already accomplished the goal that I wanted, was to be on the radio and to be on Cube. I grew up listening to Cube, and it was everything to me, and I wanted to be like a nighttime player. So being able to host a new and local music show that was hosted before by some legends, rest in peace Jay Moore and DJ Hyphen, and it was dope. But I mean, you work at radio, like in Seattle. Radio is not like what we thought it was. Like, it's not what it is like in Atlanta or anything like that. And I'll never not be grateful for that experience. And maybe I'll go back one day and that'll be the dopest shit ever. But that was the biggest thing for me through all of this, through all the events, through all the interviews, through everything I was doing. It was definitely to get this voice on radio, and I was able to do it. And I have no regrets on that. And I have no regrets not working there anymore. I got let go before COVID hit in January 2020, like a year ago, I think, like exactly a year ago. And when it happened, I was like, like I kind of was like, I wasn't even tripping. I was working a full-time job on top of that, on top of throwing parties, on top of hosting the podcast, on top of, everything else I was doing. So it was just one less thing I had to worry about.
Yeah.
That was it right there. That was the biggest goal, like for Miss Casey Carter, was to get on radio.
Damn. How did you get into radio? Was it just like after building up your name and made the right
Yeah.
connection?
They heard about me through some way and asked me to come in, and I met them, and through no experience or anything like that, I was able to get a job for one of the biggest radio platforms in the country.
Wow.
It was again, that was full circle for me right there. That was exactly what I needed. I didn't intern or anything like that.
Yeah, it's funny because like people think you need a resume such as going to college to get into like media or radio, or like I have friends who are currently in college for media or like film editing or anything like that. I'm like, you're paying $13,000 or more a semester to learn this when I've learned film editing and podcasting on my own just over the quarantine. It's just Seattle for me, because I'm currently don't go to college. Seattle for me is like college for me with like connections and stuff I've made.
Yeah, I definitely feel like I never went to school for anything that I do. And sure, there are certain things that I don't know or I don't have knowledge in, but those are the people that you can pay for once you make your money being the dope person that you are, and just like you, I taught myself everything. So it is sad to see so many people go to school, get in debt, and then come out. And then, some are lucky, they get these jobs, but some don't. And they waste so much money on that. Definitely teach yourself whatever you want to learn. There's courses. You, instead of spending 13,000, you can spend $130 on a 7-day course or something and learn so much. We're so lucky to be living in this digital age, to be learning everything we can.
What did you learn about radio like once you finally got into it? Like what are some things that you expected that kind of like fizzled out or faded away once you actually were in the station and part of it?
Well, I think that it's 2020, 2019 compared to like radio in the early 2000s and the 90s. You pictured growing up, like you're in the station, like recording live, and you get callers and you get all these people coming through and these celebrities and things like that. It definitely was not that. A lot of it was pre-recorded. A lot of people weren't at the station all the time. And just to me, it just wasn't all what it was cracked up to be. Like I felt like I was working so hard to do what I was doing. It was a great experience. Like, and again, to be able to be on the radio in a city that I grew up in, that I used to listen to, like that was just incredible. But I worked so hard to get there, and it was like I'm still working so hard to be here. And it's like, I don't know, maybe if I didn't have another job and that was just my only focus, my outlook would be a lot different. And if I was like younger, but I was just a little older and I had real life stuff happening and I was working a job. So I think to me, it was just like, it was important, but it wasn't like, ooh, this is like so filthy. This is the dopest thing ever. It just kind of like, was like, okay, this is it. Like, it's like meeting your favorite celebrity and they're just like,
People.
not as fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely wouldn't trade it for the world. And again, if I were to go back, what a blessing. But you just hear people and they like, oh, you're on the radio. Like, yeah, do you really listen to the radio? Like
Yeah.
that was always a thing where it was just like, why you gassing me if like you don't even listen to the radio?
Yeah. Do you prefer being like a radio host then or a podcast host better?
I mean, I love podcasts because you can say whatever you want. But radio is fun. Like when I go to other cities and I listen to radio, it's so fun and things like that. But so I guess it depends. I don't know. I love them both, but I don't know.
I feel like you've always been destined for the radio voice though. Like right
Yeah.
as soon as the first episode of the podcast, you're like, yo, this is Miss Casey Carter. And you have the whole
Yeah.
you have the booming radio voice.
Yeah, so I mean, it's good, but again, I think that radio is, on its last leg, sadly, in this country, and the digital world has taken over. So I'm very blessed to be hosting a podcast, and we'll see where this voice like lands me in the future.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it's dying in the country though, or just Seattle?
I think pretty soon these cities are gonna start like playing the same shit all across, like a lot of these, what is that called? What is that called when, like what is the Breakfast Club doing? It's going to be a lot of syndication. It's going to be a lot of that. I definitely feel like these robots are taking over and they're a lot cheaper for these companies that don't make a lot of money. You look at iHeart, like they're investing so much money into podcasts and things like that. So it's like they're the biggest ones. So sure, you may have your radio stations in those other cities, but I mean, they're not gonna. I don't know. I don't think that radio is going to be much. It's going to be like you're going to hear the same thing in different cities that have like
Damn.
similar markets.
Yeah, I get that. That makes sense. Syndication's a real thing.
Oh, absolutely. Why would I pay you a salary if I can just syndicate this like all my morning, evening, night show? You know, ain't nobody listening to the radio like that. So why would I waste money on talent when there's like we're paying this guy hundreds of thousands of dollars and we can just put him in, and then like they can fill it in with, you know, little local news bits here and there. And there you go. There's your radio.
Yeah. What I learned like very quickly once I was hired at the radio station 92.5 was that it definitely isn't what I thought it was going to be. Just like how you kind of said, it's to the fact that like I thought radio meant that they were kind of like they wanted to help like the local scene and stuff like that, right? And then like I met everyone that I possibly could through the radio station, and like eventually I got to someone who had to sit me down and be like, you know what commercial radio is, right? I was like, yeah, I think so. And they're like, there's no money in the local scene, so why would we push the local scene? And then that's when I truly like understood what it meant to be like commercial radio and how I prefer doing like a podcast versus commercial radio anyways. But 92.5 just definitely focuses on like the top 20 no matter what. So 93.3 is a little different because it is kind of more focused on hip hop. Were they more welcoming to the local scene, do you feel like? Or was it still kind of the same situation where they didn't really see the value in the local scene?
Yeah, I don't think they did, but that's the problem is that when they don't see the value, they're not investing into making something better. So I personally feel that once you invest into something, you can grow it. And Seattle has proven itself time and time again that we do have a great scene. I was lucky again because I was in charge of my local show. So they were open, and thank God that I had such a great program director. He was so cool and he was down to like mentor me, and he actually trusted like my word and like believed me. If I like were to push some local artists to him, he would give it a chance. And I feel that was personally because of his respect for me. We were able to actually get Jarv's single on local like regular time too, which was so unheard of.
Mm-hmm.
They never, ever, ever played local music outside of my local music show on Sunday night. So for that little step right there, that was incredible. But again, once things kind of took a turn last year, I haven't heard much. I know that they have local DJs on there, which is tight. And maybe those DJs sneak in local music here and there. I'm not too sure. I feel like they do sometimes because they're good friends of mine, and I feel like they just would do that. But yeah, it is sad that they don't invest so much into the local music scene out here. I feel like they would just benefit more. People would listen to the radio more because they were supporting. They would try harder. It would provide confidence. It would provide encouragement, but the fact that they don't, and they're just so after a bag that I don't even see exists really in what they're doing, is just like, it doesn't make sense. And maybe they have a different way of looking at things, but I think a lot of the time they're always doing things old school.
Well, the people like in power and radio are usually older heads anyway.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
stuck in their ways.
Exactly. So, I mean, and that's why people like you and other people are always going to win, because we're doing our job in providing some type of help or platform for these independent artists.
Mm-hmm. What do you think like the Seattle music scene is missing, or do you think it's actually even missing anything?
It's really hard to say, because before, when I was heavily involved in throwing shows and things like that, it was just missing like structure. It was missing it was missing somebody making it and coming back and teaching how they did it. Even though like somebody like Macklemore made it, he didn't like come back and like, I don't know. I don't look at him as like he came back and helped as much. But now I don't know what's missing. I feel like a lot of these people, they just need to go to training. Honestly, that's what I see that's missing. A lot of these younger artists are following these, younger generation of artists, and there's no professionalism. There's no, they just lack so many things that the generation before them, they came correct. Which is exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing now when it comes to helping independent artists, because I just see that being a problem all the time. They get stuck, like nobody's fucking with me, nobody's helping me. And then they do things unprofessionally, like DM you their music or tag you in posts and things like that. And it's just like, that's so like, why would you DM a music link? Like, where did you see that made success for someone? Like, why do
Yeah.
I just do not, I go on this all the time. So, for me, what I see for the younger upcoming Seattle music scene, it's definitely, that lack of like administrative work, and the simple emailing and professionalism. But who knows what the Seattle music scene is right now? It's so hard. Without shows, I can't say anything. I can't.
Yeah.
We don't have, I mean, it's great that people are making music and things like that, but what is the Seattle music scene anymore? We're all on the internet.
But I see like I've had on some of your previous guests as well, like that you've maybe even had like in 2016, that seemed like everyone still shows potential, I feel like. But it seems like the energy that they had in 2016, if they're on your show, it was kind of like the same energy they had on my show 3 to 4 years later. So what do you think's happening with this older generation of rappers also, though? They're not really getting the attention either.
I mean, yeah, hip hop is hard. You're competing with big names. Like,
Yeah.
you're trying to compete for attention from people. It's really, really hard. So I don't really have any advice, but to stay at it and keep winning. You're not gonna get success overnight to me, like,
Yeah.
everyone has their own audience. There's so many like rappers who aren't super big, but would come here and sell out the showbox, who are now in the same boat as a lot of these independent artists. Somebody like a Dizzy Wright, who was so poppin' and is just, he's trying to get back his following and consistency. Like, it's not easy trying to be a rapper, because everybody wants to be a rapper. And so if you're gonna do it, just do it, and don't try to be famous, and don't try to just just make good music.
Yeah. Yeah, music scene here is no one I thought you'd have a little bit more answers. No one has any answers for the scene here, really. It's not a mess at all. I think people work very hard here in the scene.
I mean, I think also people define success in different ways. Like, I feel like if you're trying to get on, like, that's a horrible goal. Like,
Yeah.
like, what? That's what you want to do? If you want to do that, then be goofy, because that's a goofy goal.
Yeah.
Like, you're like a walking meme if your goal is to get on and get rich and get famous. Like, or move. This is not the city for you. This is not, I don't know. I just have an approach of do what feels good and be good at it. And you can't beat good. Like, good is always going to win.
Yeah, but I don't feel like we even have like just like the average person doesn't even know there's a music scene, though. It's like I describe it as the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. You're walking through the closet, and then you realize that there's a huge ass music scene here.
Okay, well, here's the answer to what's missing in Seattle and what can help is there's no media anymore covering the shit that's being done here. The papers aren't covering it. The local media is going down. Everyone's trying to do their own podcast, or everyone's trying to do their own show, and no one's working together. So everything's spread hella thin. So how is anyone going to hear about our music?
There we go. We just gotta figure that out. Yeah, it's a.
Well, you also got to think, like, who lives in Seattle? A bunch of white and other people who are moving from other cities who do tech. They don't they don't care or know about the local music scene. That's a big chunk of who lives here. Before all those people moved here, it was all of us who lived here, and we were filling up shows, we were going to the venues. It was us, it was our scene. So since there's not enough of us anymore, like why, like who's going to spread the word? That's the thing. The scene has changed so much because the demographic of who lives in this city and enjoys that stuff doesn't live here anymore.
But they have the money to help the scene. Not saying like they should be paying artists, but I feel like if we found some way to connect like tech, not even like an actual like genre of music, we don't need like more techno artists, but I feel like if there's a way that tech and the music scene here in Seattle could connect, whether it's like these Amazon people need a product to be pushed or something, and the music scene is like doing ads for them, or like there's tons of like graphic designers in the Seattle area. Like if they're helping make like cover art for the music scene, I don't know. There's just so many ways, but there's like no one's reached out to Amazon really or something. I don't know.
I feel like people have.
Really?
I feel like you're so young and I love it. And I feel like you're saying exactly what we used to say and
That's
then
what
try to make happen, and then it never did. So that's exactly why things are the way they are. Like, it's the people who get excited about Seattle music and like that are coming into this, they see such a great thing. Their eyes are open and they're like, this is so dope. Like, and then once you get in it and you start doing the work and start seeing that like parts aren't moving, it gets discouraging.
Yeah, it doesn't have to though. You just need optimistic people.
Well, there you go. Looks like you got your job ready to go.
But that's crazy though. That's been like.
I mean, I've been doing this for 10 years.
Yeah,
like,
what the fuck?
Exactly. Like if you,
what the hell?
This is not the city for what we're trying to make. This is a white city.
Yeah.
So they're making anything safe, like somebody like the artists who have already started making waves. It's difficult.
Yeah.
So that's why I just say like do you and do what's good and stop trying to impress or do things for certain reasons. Just make your music, make your moves, be smart about business, collab and work with one another, and maybe move.
Shit.
There's no labels here. Why would there's I don't it's the reality of what we have here.
Yeah, I see that. Fucking if you're looking back 10 years down the road and you still see the same thing, that can be very discouraging.
I mean, but there's not to say that so many people haven't left the city and made amazing things happen.
Yeah, they don't come back though after that.
I mean, Macklemore lives here, and he does great things with like the residency and things like that. Like, I don't want to take away and be like Macklemore hasn't done shit for Seattle. He definitely has in some type of capacity, but he's done it. I think I'm talking from a place of like being a woman of color and working with lots of artists of color and only seeing people who look like a lot of the people who live in this city make it out of the city.
Do you think there's actually I guess that is a thing. Like I was talking to my friend about like Wale, like he always tries to say that he's not always saying it, but like he said that he feels like he's not an A-list rapper because of how dark his skin is. Do you actually do you think it actually comes down to he said that before? He feel like Wale doesn't feel like his music stuff.
He's very emotional.
Yeah.
And people don't want to be around that negative energy.
Yeah,
that's what I see. I think he's trying to find an excuse for why people aren't fucking with him.
Do you think it really comes down to like skin color and stuff though?
In this city, yes. In this city, absolutely. This is okay. Let's put all the artists that we have in LA. How come they're winning now? Because it's a diverse city. They have establishment. They have record labels and things like that. Like all the labels up here are white. Like what is here for people of color? What is here for people of color? that would progress people of color in hip hop to win. That's my reality. That's just what I see, and that's my perception of living and being here for so long. Maybe it's different, and maybe I'm clouded. My vision is clouded, but that's just how I perceive things.
I'd like to think that like maybe when people think that way, it's like a cop out, but maybe it's not. But I don't know. I feel like there are definitely people that can be successful no matter what their race or age or gender is. But I guess,
Absolutely.
but
Absolutely. I feel like if you don't have support, where can you go?
yeah, gotta leave. I don't know. Yeah, but I feel like I like to think that like the back to like the time thing. I like to think that it doesn't have to just take time. I don't feel like waiting always helps though either. Like I feel like I don't know what specifically, and I'm learning, but I feel like we don't have to like wait for there to be like a different demographic, or we don't have to wait for record labels if you want to stay in Seattle. But then at the same time, to figure out what it takes, you can just say it takes time. So it's just it can be
No, it
very
doesn't take
conflicting.
time. I don't feel like it takes time. I mean, if you know what you want in life, whatever it is, if you're an artist, a podcast host, a media personality, a graphic designer, and you you build your craft and you're good and you build a network and things like that, you'll figure it out and your destiny will lead you to where you need to be. I feel like a lot of people limit themselves by thinking like, no, I want to stay in Seattle or whatever is limiting them. So um, I don't think that there's like a recipe for how to make it or, it's this or you have to wait or whatever. You just, you need to be open-minded and go with the flow and just be good at what you're good at.
Right.
I think it's not that it is difficult, but I think it's difficult that we put so many barriers in front of us. Like we all get in our own way.
Hmm.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's why you got to start young and figure out what those barriers are, and either break through them or ignore them. I feel
Yeah,
like.
I think it's okay though for people to evolve and to continuously grow and to find themselves. I think that time is just something that's there and um yeah, I don't know. I feel like you're going to be able to continue to grow as much as you can, but don't let time constrain you or like, oh, I'm getting too old or
Yeah.
whatever it is. Yeah, just keep getting better at what you're doing. If you need
Yeah.
to move. If you want to stay, figure it out. But I hate the whole concept of like, this city's not fucking with me or I just can't make it. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. You're saying it right because that's what you believe.
Yeah. It's cop out phrases, in my opinion.
Yeah, I just seeing that so many times I don't tolerate it.
So, when you're making your podcast or like any type of media, who's the audience you're trying to reach? Do you try to focus on like a Seattle audience, or because what we were just talking about with the scene here, do you not try to look to the people in Seattle to listen to your podcast? Do you try to reach out to audiences across the world, or do you just put it out and hope that whoever listens listens? Like, how do you
We are
market it?
definitely targeting like entrepreneurs, small business owners, the dreamers, the hustlers. I mean, I don't limit to like Seattle, it's the knowledge that's being spread on the podcast is going to be useful to anybody who is looking to get particularly in that industry or just needing some inspiration and motivation. So when we are on the mic and we're talking, I feel like we are talking to an audience of people who are just thirsty for knowledge.
Does it what made you decide though to officially after like 4 years like talk to guests outside of Seattle? Was it literally just because it was usually in person that you talked to your guests were just Seattleites, or like what
Well, the
switched you for
reason
you?
the pandemic, because
Yeah.
we're just on the computer now. So it just aesthetically changed, you know, like before we were all taking pictures with each other, we were grabbing videos of people in person, which is exactly why we needed, you know, I preferred these being in person interviews, but the fact that we had to change, and it's all because the safety of other people, like why not talk to people outside of the city now and get way more different perspectives, like, you know, these are different, like these people don't live here. They don't breathe the same air. They don't drink the same type of water as us. They don't have the same type of struggles as we do. So hearing their journey and their stories is just, it's and being able to share those has been so inspiring.
And how do you find your guests? Do they usually reach out to you at this point, or like are there certain people like you have to reach out to specifically?
It's been across. We get hit up by a lot of like PR companies that pitch their, you know, their
Mm,
clients to us, that align exactly with our vision of, you know, entrepreneurs and people who are just like moving and shaking and creating really dope products, or doing really dope things. A lot of our past guests who are amazing, they recommend a lot of the people, like their peers and colleagues and things like that. And then depending on what exactly we're trying to look for, if we see somebody, we'll reach out. But for a lot of the last year, we were able to, our, I would say like from September on, all of our guests were people who reached out to us.
wow.
Such a blessing.
So once this pandemic hopefully ends, I still give it another year or two
Yeah,
realistically.
absolutely.
Once it does end though, do you have any like thought or ideas of how they're going to go about doing the podcast? Like, are you still going to incorporate Zoom interviews then, or how do you hope to get
Um,
guests outside of Seattle?
So for the rest of the year, absolutely, you know, we want to remain safe. Everyone of us that is a part of the globe is on the same page when it comes to being safe and being respectful to each other's health. So our vision for the rest of this year is definitely doing, you know, over virtual interviews. But for me, I come from an events background. I love being in front of people and things like that. So I don't know how it will look in the future, but events is the biggest thing. You know, we want to be able to take the podcast and do more live events. That
Mhm.
that was something that was that was exactly what we were working on right before the pandemic hit. We had an event scheduled and everything. It was going to be a collaboration with other podcasts, and then, you know, the Rona hit. So
Done.
that's tabled, but that's going to happen.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens. Who knows where we'll be in a year? Maybe we'll have a private jet and be able to go all over and interview people.
Yeah. Like that one pastor. Who's that? The guy that like people hate because he has his own private jet and flies places. There's a few of those
Hey,
guys
don't be
actually.
hating on people who got it. Work on yours. Listen to
So
the blow up so you can, you know, figure out how to get you one.
like I've noticed like even like 92.5, like they've let off tons of employees. Like even like my engineer that I'd use when I did in-person interviews at the station, like luckily he didn't get let off. He just noticed how things were going, so he decided to leave, which was very sad for me. I miss you, Gary. But so if we're noticing like even radio stations are starting to like cut off all their employees, no matter like there were employees that I was connected with that like were there for over 20 years now to be let off. Like it didn't COVID did not discriminate at all.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think starts to happen? And then we're starting to see like local venues go down also. So what do you think is going to happen to local studios? Do you think these are going to start closing as well? Like, do you expect in the next, if this COVID continues for like another year or two, that you can still hopefully return to your studio even, or like, what do you see for that?
I feel like people will still running their business during COVID. Like I don't think, like, studio settings is such an intimate kind of thing where you're not involving so many people and you can limit, you know, the amount of people coming in. So I mean, compared to venues and things like that, I think that's a completely different kind of comparison, just because, yeah, I feel like venues, it's going to be hard. The
Mhm.
strongest will survive. I'm not too familiar with what happened with the new CARES Act that was just passed, but I believe the initiative that Stephen from Numos, I think it's like Save Music Live WA or something like that. they've been able to do something where they're saving the venues. But when it comes to studios, I feel like people are definitely still in the studio right now, like at this moment. So I don't
Yeah.
see those going anywhere.
Yeah, well, that's good then. I went to Studio Sage like this over the weekend, and everyone just has to wear masks and stuff. But
Yeah, I feel like that's definitely a business where you can limit the amount of people being in there. You can be safe. And it is what it is. It's at the discretion of the person who owns it. But when it comes to like a venue and throwing a party and everyone drinking and things like that, that's a lot more risky.
yeah, this is it's a time to be alive. It's a crazy time to be alive. It's a people are evolving though. I feel like if you haven't evolved, then you're kind of screwed.
Be gentle to yourself, be kind to yourself, take the breaks that you need to, but this is a great time to figure out like what's important to you. And for me it was like I had to keep asking myself, am I trying to hold on to this because this is what I love doing, or am I trying to hold on to this because this is who I'm used to being and everyone knows me for being this way? And having events being taken away from me was a blessing because I needed to chill out. Like I have 2 dogs, I have a home. I was working and then coming home and changing and going out at night. Like these 2 dogs have held me down so much. I feel so bad that I never like walked them or anything like that. And then also just letting go of like who this music person was in me that I was holding on to for so long. I've been able to pivot and just be a resource instead of being somebody to like listen to their music or anything like that. It's been a great pivot for me. I'm in such a great space.
Yeah, I don't understand why it's like just as a human race, it's hard for us to like let go of things sometimes. Like even simple things like I've focused on letting go and I'm like, God, why am I even holding on to this? But it's just like once you find something that like you've like grown attached to that you feel like makes you be a certain person, like that's who you are, even if it's silly, it's kind of hard to let go.
Absolutely.
It's that can also be a setback though. Like whether you're an artist or whatever, like if you're stuck in your ways, it's it can be more destructive than good.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I've been, talking to myself more and figuring myself out and just trusting wherever I'm at is where I need to be. So I think a lot more people need to. I know we all have, we want to hit goals and we want to be successful and we want this life, but rushing to figure that out is just I don't see that being a great way to obtain what you want in life. Trust your process. That's the biggest thing. Trust your process. It took me so long to get to where I am, and I'm not, my whole vision has changed. Um, and I'm so grateful for everything I've been through. I have no regrets, and even though there are things that may have not went the exact way I wanted them to, I'm still very grateful for all the experiences. There's never no lessons. I mean, no losses. It's all lessons.
Hell yeah. You've definitely dropped a lot of gems, but is there any final advice that you have for up and coming artists, creators, influencers?
Take time to yourself. Don't be so hard on yourself. The bag's gonna be there if it's already yours. It is
Yeah.
already yours.
We need Amazon to sponsor our podcast. That's what we need. That's what I've decided.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty
Yeah.
crazy.
Amazon is there, but I mean, look who runs the company. So, sometimes that was one thing that I learned was that I gave too many people that have showed me that they're not the greatest hope. Be like, you know what, they're gonna be a part of this. And I just got let down a lot of times. So that's exactly why I just be doing everything myself. And then they'll come after. That's the funniest part about it all. They'll come after. You build it, and they will come.
Yes.
So there you go. We'll end it with that. You build it yourself, make it the dopest shit ever. These people, they don't want to build ideas anymore. They want to take your idea. So
Dun, dun, dun.
build it, and then they'll come to you.
Yes. So what is the easiest way for people to reach Miss Casey Carter?
My Instagram is definitely I'm the most active on there. So that's Miss Casey Carter. My email button is in my bio as well. If you're an artist out there or a small business owner, I recently launched my digital download templates. These are templates to where if you want to be featured on a podcast, you want to get a feature in a newspaper. I wrote out a whole email for you to copy and insert your own information so you can just use that. So you don't be left on red. I have music submission templates, EPK templates, media kit templates, all the templates you need to succeed with, you being an artist or a small business. So go check those out.
Hell yeah. This is the NAST podcast with
Miss Casey Carter.